Hi, my name is Vlad. I work as a software engineer at Starhive, and I like to build different kinds of applications. In this video, we are going to build a recruitment agency portal in less than 1 hour using Starhive, Next.js and Vercel. Now a little bit of the reasons to choose those technologies. Next.js is a modern React framework that's easy to get started with. Then Vercel would take care of the build and continuous integration, along with HTTPS setup, domain configuration. It also offers a generous free tier. Starhive is a data management platform that can be used as your backend, as well as the flexible admin tool for the end users. You can also find more introduction videos about Starhive on our website. I find this combination of technologies quite efficient and powerful to get started with a complete solution for your business in a very short time. Now let's quickly talk about our main users and their use cases. First of all, we'll have agents that will publish open positions, see applications, and update application status according to the recruitment workflow. Then we'll have applicants who will use the public website to see open positions, and they can submit their CV and other data to apply for those roles. And here is the plan for our tutorial. First of all, we'll model the data in Starhive. Starhive will be the back office that our agents will use. Then we'll move on and create Next.js template project, generate TypeScript schema based on our types in Starhive, and then we'll spend most of the time building the actual public website to show the open positions. In the end, we'll spend 5 minutes to deploy our final solution to Vercel. After creating an account in Starhive, we'll see this home page. So we need to create a space for our use case, and let's call it something simple. Jobs portal should be good. Alright, now space is created and we need to go ahead and create some types. So we'll need a type for the company. We can also select an icon and the color for the icon. And you can also provide an optional description. Okay, type is created. We have some default attributes already, and we need to create some more. First of all, email, and for that we select type email. Okay, that's done. Then we need a phone number. We can just type text for that. And then we'll need an address, type text as well. Alright, then we can proceed and create our second type. That would be a position. Company is hiring for positions. We also select a different icon for that. And for the label attribute, we can name it title. Now let's add some attributes to this type. We'll have a description that will contain the job requirements and benefits and so on. And we use a rich text type for that. Then we have, let's have application end date. That would have type date, which would mean until when we still receive applications. Then let's have a type that would be an option, and options would be employment or contract, depending on whether company is hiring permanent employee or just have a fixed term contract work. And we can have minimal cardinality as 1 to make it a required attribute. Then let's have a free text contract term that can say 1 month or half a year. Let's keep it simple and move on to create our next type. That would be a candidate. Candidates apply to positions. Candidates would have an email. Type email. They would also have phone number. And that should be enough contact information about candidates to begin with. And then we'll create an actual application type. That's an event when somebody applies for an open position. And for that, we'll refer to the position by using object reference type. And here in the drop down, we can select that this attribute refers to a position type. Then we'll have a candidate, and it would also be an object reference that refers to the candidate type. And then we'll need an actual resume of an applicant. That would be media that will allow us to attach any file to this attribute. I just realized that position is missing a reference to the company. And let's go back and fix that quickly. So we select object reference and point it to the company. In addition to the basic attributes that we have added, we would also need to track the status of each position and each application. And for that, we can use workflows. We go to the settings and select workflows tab. So first we create a position workflow that we'll use to track each position, and we'll start with defining states. First would be incoming, when somebody when an agent creates a position, when it's received. And then the next status could be open for applications. It's when it's ready to receive applications from the public applicants. And the next status would be closed for applications, when we have enough in the pool so we don't receive any more applications. Then we'll also have states for hired and removed. After we have created the states, we need to create transitions that define whether it's possible to go from one state to another. For example, we can decide that it's not allowed to go from hired state to open for application state. When creating a transition, it's important to give it a descriptive name. The transition name will show up in the object view when you're updating the status, so it makes it easier to understand what kind of process you're following to update the value. I'm going to skip to the part when all transitions for this workflow are configured. Alright, now we can see that positions go from incoming state to open for applications, then they become closed for applications, and then they can either be moved to hired or removed. Actually, you can move a position to removed state from any other state. And now let's go ahead and create workflow for the hiring process that would reflect the status of an application. Let's call it candidate workflow. There should be states like applied, when somebody has applied. Then we'll have in progress state, which would mean that the candidate is interviewing. We can have a hired state, means that somebody has been successfully hired. Then rejected or cancelled. And now we need to go ahead and create transitions for this workflow as well. I'm going to skip this section until the final result of this configuration. Now when the workflows are ready, let's go back to manage types view. And first of all, we need to add the status to the position type, and that would be a workflow called position workflow. Okay, this is done. Then we choose the application type, and for that we'll also have the status, and it would be of type workflow, and we point to the candidate workflow. I have added some test data manually already. You can see there is a position in the list view. In this view you can also rearrange the columns. Let's move the status closer to the beginning, and you can see there is company filled out, description, contract term, the title, the contract, the type of the position. You can click on it and see the object view. So here is our status, and let's put it into incoming. And as the process goes, I can update this position to different statuses. For the application type, we can also create objects manually. Let's create one application, and let's call it John Smith for Senior Data Scientist role. So that would be the name of this object, and then we choose the candidate John Smith that has been previously created. And for the resume, we just can attach a file. Here is our sample. And we can also provide a status. Let's set it to applied. We save the object, and then it will appear in our list. We can click on it and see the application, and we can also view the attached files. And here is the sample resume. We can also easily navigate to the candidate object by looking at the preview and clicking open object, and then we can see also the contact information, so then we can reach out to the candidate. When our data model is ready, we can proceed to creating the public website. So we go to this public GitHub repository for Starhive Next.js starter, and in the bottom we find the button to deploy it on Vercel. Then on the Vercel side, you would have to give it a name of GitHub repository that will be created on your behalf. You can also choose to create it as a private Git repository. And then when you press create, it will go ahead and build and deploy the first version that will be accessible via a custom URL. Let's check it out. We see the demo UI from the Starhive Next.js starter, and this is going to be our starting point. Here are some onboarding steps that we are going to follow, but first of all, let's go to your repository and clone the code to the local machine. There I have the Next.js project, and I'm going to go ahead and install npm dependencies by running npm install command. To start the local development server, we can execute npm run dev command. Then we can go to the localhost URL and we see the same user interface that we have seen from the Vercel deployment. I'm gonna open the sources on the left side of my screen and the browser window on the right side of my screen, so it's easy to see the changes reflected immediately in the user interface. First thing we need to do is to connect Starhive workspace to our Next.js project. And we can do that by providing environment variable called Starhive workspace ID. In Next.js, you can provide environment variables in a file called .env, and let's create one called .env.local, and here we create our environment variable. To get the workspace ID, you can go to the Starhive UI, and in the URL you can see that ID coming after workspace/. So we copy that value into the environment variables file, and when we refresh the website UI, we can see that the first step has green check mark. So we can proceed to the second step, and for that we need to generate an API key. We go to settings and then personal access tokens. There on the right you have a button, create access token. We can give it a name. When it's created, we can copy the actual value and insert it in the environment variables. Keep in mind that it's the only time you see the actual token, so you have to preserve it very well. Make sure to not check it into the sources, because it has to be kept secretly. And then we have already covered the step when we create spaces and types. So the next we're going to do is that we're going to create a TypeScript schema based on our types. For that, we're going to use API connectors extension. Go to the API connectors extension. There you can select the our space, jobs portal, and you also select the language. For this project, we use TypeScript, so we select that, and then we press generate button. You get an archive that contains the sources generated based on our types. When you extract the archive, go to the sources directory, and there you can find the schema subdirectory that you can just copy and paste into our project structure next to the Starhive client. Here you can see the classes for company, application, position, and so on. Then we go to the client factory file, and there you can see the code for initialization of our client. We have to replace the empty map with JSON decoders constant that is in the sources that were generated, and then after that you can see the fourth step of the guide completed. Now let's start building. Under the app directory, create a job subdirectory containing page.tsx file, and then that would be our list view. We create a new component. Let's call it jobs list. First, let's output something just to make sure that it works. Check in the browser. Yes, it shows jobs list string. Now let's apply some styles to position items centrally, and let's add a header saying open positions. And now let's try to get some data onto the page. First, we create Starhive client by calling create client function, and then we have a search function on the client. We provide position.typeID. Here is where our generated code comes in. Instead of hard-coding the IDs, we get that from the generated sources package. And we can also provide offset and limit, so you can have paginated responses back. Notice that the positions collection is typed here, so you can refer to the attributes of a position type without actually having to write that code yourself. Let's output the title and see it appear on the screen. So that data actually comes from Starhive, from that test row that we created earlier. Now let's add the company name next to the position title. Company is a reference attribute of a position, so that's basically an ID pointing to the company object. And in order to get the company names, we need to fetch company objects. To do that, first we compose a StarQL query where object ID is in the list of company IDs we get from the list of the positions. When we construct the StarQL query, we can call a search function on the client and provide that StarQL. Then we'll get back the collection of the company objects. Now we have a collection of companies, and now it's quite simple to find the company object based on the company ID from the position. When we have the company, we can just output the name of it in our component. Alright, now we see that it works. It actually might be a good time to create a component for a position list item. Let's call it job list item. The input properties would be the position object and the company object. The job list item would be a functional React component. It will take in a position and a company, and what's left to do is just render them nicely in the UI. Let's replace our temporary code with this newly created component and provide the input objects. Let's add some styles. You can also take your time and play around with the look and feel of the component to make it look the way you like. Then we output the position title and the company name. There you go, just remove the temporary text message. Now let's also output a label of the type of the position, whether it's contract or employment. Let's have a small label on the right. You can see the type here only allows values as contract or employment. Because this code is generated, it helps you to avoid mistakes. Let's just add quickly another position that would be of a different type. We have contract, so we need an employment one as well. Add some random data here, and we see it appears in the list with a different label. Alright, now the list is ready, so we can move on and create the position details page. The route for this page would include the dynamic ID parameter that would be an ID of our position in Starhive. So we define that ID as a parameter to the page component. Let's quickly output something simple to make sure that the page works. And now let's add the link to the page from the position list item. When the user clicks on the position item, they will be directed to the position details page. Okay, so it was placed in the wrong directory, but after we move that, we can see that it works. Okay, let's add some styling and output more details. To get more details, we actually need to fetch the position object from Starhive. We can call getObject function to get a specific object from Starhive, and we need to pass in the ID of the object and also the ID of the type. As we also want to show the company name, let's fetch the company as well. As we remember, company is a reference attribute, so position getCompany gives us the company ID. And then we can fetch the entire company details by calling getObject function. Let's output the position title, company name, make sure quickly that it works. The next thing we need to do is to output the job description, which is rich text. The format for rich text attribute is markdown, so we need to install a library that will help us render the markdown in HTML page. After we have installed React Markdown library, we can call Markdown component, and we provide the Markdown content as the children element. We can see that it outputs the text, however it's not formatted according to our input. For example, requirements should be a header and benefits should be a header as well. So in order to do that, we need to provide custom styling for those HTML elements. There we go. After giving some styles, we can see that our job description looks more like an actual rich text. Okay, now that the description looks good, let's move on and create the application form so that the users can submit their applications to the positions. Let's create an application form component, and as our input properties, we will need position ID so that we know which position the user applies to. The application form would be a functional React component, and this component will have browser logic, so we need to specify use client. Let's just add this to the page and see that it's connected. Yes, we can see the apply button. Let's have a variable that defines whether the form is visible or not. So we only show the form if the user has clicked apply button. And we can see that this logic works. So we can move on and create the actual form elements. First, let's define the form data type. We will need a name, an email, phone number, and a resume from the user to be able to submit their application. And then we also set up the initial state. After that, we can create input elements in the UI. A little bit of copy pasting here. And now we have all the input elements in the UI. And we also need a submit button. Let's make the submit button reflect the state when it's loading, so that it's clear to the user that something is happening. And apply some styles. Now we need to create an event handler that would update our form data when the user changes values in the inputs. And then we attach the handler function to the onChange attribute of the inputs. Next, we should create a function to handle the form submission. First, we set the loading as true. Then we prepare the payload based on our form inputs. Then in the try-catch block on the finally, we set loading as false. In the try block, we call the internal API route that we will create later, and we specify the HTTP method. Let's have it as post, and then our form payload would be the body. And then on success we hide the form, setting visible to false. Let's display the status of the form submission in a nice way using React Tostify. So when the response is OK, we show the success notification, otherwise we show an error notification. And we need to attach the handler function to onSubmit attribute. We also need to add toast container onto the page. That doesn't look right. This is because we also need to import the CSS styles from the React Tostify library. And now we can see it looks way better. Let's move on to create the API route that will handle the form submission. We create a post request handler. First we get the form data. There we can get each form element by its name. Let's add a simple check that the resume file is actually present. Otherwise, we send back the bad request status code. Now we got all the form elements. So we need to create an application object in Starhive. One of the attributes on the application object is the candidate reference. So first let's check whether the candidate exists given a provided email. For that we can use Starhive query language or StarQL. Here's a simple query to get users whose email equals our input value that we can pass into the search function. If the search has given non-empty result, we use the first candidate from the result. If there is no candidate with the given email, we can create candidate object with the provided email, name and phone number. Then we can use that candidate ID as the reference in the application object. We also need the resume file to attach to the application object, so let's first handle that. We get the file from the form, and what we need to do is to upload the data to Starhive, and that is done using upload file stream data. It's required to provide content type when calling that function. So for simplicity, let's say we only accept PDF. In this case, the content type would be application/PDF. Once we have uploaded the data, we can use that as an attribute value when we create an application object. We provide the data in add_resume_data function call. And then we also provide the candidate reference in the candidate setter and the reference to the position using position setter. When the application is created, we return a successful response. Later on, we can provide more data in the response so we can render more useful information on the page. Let's quickly test the code. And we got the successful notification. Let's check in Starhive what we got. If we check the candidate, we can see that the previously created candidate was used. And we also see the new application created successfully. Now let's commit our codes to GitHub repository, and then we can proceed to configure production deployment on Vercel. Let's go to our project in Vercel. Now we need to replicate this environment configuration in Vercel. So we provide the same params for workspace ID and API token, and we can see that in the previous deployment they were actually not yet applied, so Vercel couldn't build the pages. But now if we redeploy, the environment variables should be picked up correctly. And this time the deployment was successful. So we go to our project URL and go to the jobs page, and we can see that open positions are visible, and we can click on the positions to see the details, and we can also test the application form to make sure that it works. Let's create a new applicant by using a different email and submit the form. Okay, created successfully. Let's go to Starhive now and check whether this application has been registered. We can see the new candidate in the list with their contact information, and we can see the new application. A quick summary of what we have achieved during this tutorial. We have our frontend in React that we have complete control over. We can completely change the styles and the way it looks. We have continuous integration and deployment using Vercel. Then we also have a very flexible admin UI in Starhive that we can start onboarding users immediately. And it also has a set of features that we haven't covered, such as task management, automations, custom views, data export, and many more. And our solution is very cost efficient. Starhive offers a good free tier and then quite competitive subscription prices. Vercel has a free hobby tier. Once you want to convert it to commercial use, they have also quite good licenses. Feel free to go ahead and try this setup yourself. Good luck, and thank you for watching.